You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Betoota Advocate on Desert Rock FM. Welcome back to the Betoota Advocate radio show, where we interview some iconic Australians, mostly Australians we have on this show, at least once a week. A lot of you have been listening for many years, and we've had as diverse as ever year, I suppose. We've ranged between music and art and sports and politics, of course. Different people every week. And, in Australia, in the public eye, particularly within music and the arts, there's not many stayers, is what we've found, as long as we've been doing this podcast. But today's guest is, so much so that they have been immortalised with the highest honours you can get in the world of rock and roll in Australia. Thank you for joining us, Mark Wilson from Jet.
Hi, thanks for having me. Long time scroller, first time interviewee.
Oh well, thank you. We're glad you could see us in the flesh. We're not actually AI. We've worked long and hard creating a Betoota voice that cannot be emulated by AI. We've since learnt. We put a few.
Yeah, and as you're about to learn, we're way funnier on the internet than we are behind the microphone.
Well, now we're kind of fanning a little bit, and that's not conducive to honest regional news. When we start asking all the questions that we wanted to ask, all 20 years since you guys kind of hit the scene, and it's 20 years since Get Born.
That's correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about now we're looking back at it all. You've kind of become a staple in Australian music, Australian screen as well. Jet's always been included in with television shows or just on TV. Can you tell me, leading into the release of Get Born, did you think this was going to get away? Like this was going to be the one?
I mean, look, we knew we had good tunes, but at the same time, so much of it is luck. You can have great tunes and have zero luck. You can be doing the wrong, the thing that people aren't kind of into at the time or whatever. But so you got to chalk a bit of it up to that, lady luck. But look, we had confidence that it was going to do okay, but I think that it went a lot better than any of us could have imagined. Sold over 5 million records, and it was probably one of the last records before things stopped selling records, which is, it was one of the last. It was before before YouTube, before iTunes. I mean, our song launched the iPod, like they used it in the first iPod commercial. So, that's as a touch point in time, that's a pretty big turning point in the way people use music, listen to music.
Yeah, there's a bit more than luck involved in becoming global superstars, well known all around the world. I did want to ask about that iTunes commercial. Obviously now, people would jump at the opportunity. It's a no-brainer. Everyone wants to be on commercials like that. Everyone wants to associate with, various tech brands, etc. Back then, they're breaking through. They're doing something fairly different. It's not a surefire hit or a surefire winner. At that point in time, what were the negotiations like, and what was your perspective on saying, yeah, let's have a crack at that?
Look, I can't really remember negotiations. We, being like probably 22-year-old idiots, probably just wanted a free iPod out of it. We probably would have been happy for that. But for us, it was just, we saw it as a new front. We saw it come as a new frontier of music, a new medium, which evidently it has become all that kind of streaming sort of side of things. But we just thought, it would be like, launching using your song to launch a vinyl or something. It's just it's our new way. Even though that the actual technology itself is sort of superseded, but it was definitely at the time. It wasn't like the done thing to put your song in an ad. It was kind of the start of all that.
Yeah.
But we saw it as an exciting kind of like new technology, and and I think we're probably right.
Yeah, well, it's a before and after. The fact that we're doing this today, this interview on a podcast, that all dates. Yeah. The term podcast comes from the iPod, which you launched 20 years ago.
Did you get a few nanos out of it, or they only give you a shuffle?
We didn't get anything other than a little bit of cash. Like, it wasn't even a lot of cash. It was just it was just going to be a global thing. So we thought, well, it'll be everywhere at once, So we thought it's better than trying to get on each radio station in each country and each market.
For
you know,
sure.
like we can go across the globe with one go. Yeah.
Tell me, I want to talk about that. Like in that era, so you guys were like the you know, as you said, 22-year-old. I imagine lunatics at that point because it's all
Very much
happening
so.
for you and things are leveling up day by day. And you know, okay, now we're touring this, and now we're doing that, and now we're on CSI, and now we're on, you know, all these things are happening all at once. Probably the old guard at that time. So we're talking like the squarely Gen X kind of MTV generation rockers had in their mind, particularly in Australia, this kind of anti-selling out thing. And I guess you guys were so young that you could just not buy into their code. And you could just, as you said, you know, use an iPod commercial in lieu of radio airplay, and that'll take you around the world. Do you think being young actually helped you guys go that big?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think it would have been nice to have a couple of albums under your belt, or a bit of life experience under your belt for some things. But at the same time, like thinking back now, like if I was trying to do it now, do that, because I've seen schedules from back then. And we pretty much didn't have a day off, but like we didn't have more than a week off in 2.5 years. You know, like it's terrifying. But now as a 42, 43-year-old, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, I'd need a week off after 2 weeks. You know, like,
Hangovers last for a couple of days.
They definitely do.
Where were you guys at? Where were you guys at that point in time in your life? I'm asking, was it a group of single blokes who were actually able to just pack briefcases? There weren't kids in the picture. There weren't anything like that. It was... You were able to just become transient human vessels?
No kids. I think only one of us had a steady... Cam had a girlfriend who's now his wife, so they went for the long haul. But, we were... I mean, I'd never even been out of Australia, man. Like, but when we started, you know, I grew up in Geelong, and I'd moved to Melbourne when I was 20, and then met the Jet dudes a year later, and then I was gone, you know? So,
what was the process meeting those Jet guys? You said you came out of Geelong, they came up north. How did you stumble into them?
Yeah, they were from the sort of southeastern suburbs of Melbourne. I met them at a pub, just like you'd meet anybody. At the time, they were just another band, and we just chatted and we got along. And they asked me to try out for the band because they were looking for a bass player. And initially, I said, "Nah, I've already got my own band," you know. But then and then I hung out with them for the night, and we got along so well. We had so much in common that the next day I texted Nick on my Nokia, whatever phone it was at the time. Yep, that's it, with Snake. I texted Nick and said, that'd actually be pretty good to have a tryout. You know, he's like, oh, cool. He sent me or gave me a CD with like 17 songs on. He's like, I'll learn 4 or 5 songs. And I learnt them all in a couple of days and sort of changed all the parts and wrote all my own parts and stuff for the songs, because I thought if I'm going to be in the band, I want sort of to put my own stamp on it. So, you know, big balls when you're 21. I probably wouldn't have that. But then, then I was in the band. But at that stage, we were just doing little pubs in Melbourne and stuff. You know, it was very small time at the time.
Was there? I want to ask this now because you're old enough to reveal the Illuminati that's involved in, when young men get picked up like this in a, they've all got long hair and they smell of cigarettes and whatever. But then eventually someone who's very clean cut in a suit walks in the room, and it's probably 20, 30 years older than you. When was that moment?
Well, it wasn't actually someone. It was, I think, one of the first people to see us was a guy called Glenn Dickey, who's now based in Sydney, but he worked for EMI down here. And I think he was one of the first to spot us, and there was a few local people, small, like a guy who ended up being our lawyer, David. He had a little label and small labels, but we were kind of like had a fairly strong ambition to not just sign a little Australian deal and just stay here. We wanted to sign a deal with overseas. So eventually the overseas label started hearing about us. And then one day at a small pub in Melbourne, all the industry was all in this one pub watching us play a gig. It was pretty stupid.
Oh, so the word had got around by that point.
But they came here to see us. We made them come here. They were like, oh, come over to America and do a showcase. And we're like, no, you come over here and watch us play in our pub that we like playing in.
How were the negotiations on those first album deals there? I noticed you guys have 3 albums. Some stories you hear about, young guys coming through, young girls coming through, getting locked into some tricky deals where they don't see a lot of coin out of it. Did you guys have anyone helping you out there, or how did you kind of?
Yeah, no, we did. We had good managers and stuff like that, and also we were pretty hot, so we were getting offered good stuff, good deals. You know, so if someone was offering a crappy deal, we just, you know, we could. That's why we said for everyone to come out here to see us, because we thought that will be the thing that, like, if they all come out here, then they're keen. You know, if we have to go to them, then they can just show up, you know, and then go home. Then we don't know who's keen and who's not.
So it all happens at once. Everything, as you said, you know, didn't have a week off for 2.5 years. I introduced this podcast by saying that you've been immortalised, and you have been in the, you know, in the ARIA's Hall of Fame. What do you think was the biggest moment there? And we ask a lot of our guests this. What was the moment where you're like, holy shit, this is lifelong now? You know, we're not just a flash in the pan. We are going to live off this, and this is going to define us.
Gee, yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, it'd be things like winning a MTV Music Award, or you know, not that you do it for awards or care about it, but it's like a bit of a nod. Yeah. I think like getting asked to close out the year on SNL that year, their final show, be the musical guest, was pretty big. But for me, like, the thing that I always remember is when it's more so when I knew that it wasn't just like a small thing. Was when we were playing. We only had an EP out at the time. We'd finished the album, but the album didn't come out for 6-8 months after we actually completed recording it. We just toured between. And we were playing at a festival in Japan, Fuji Rock, on like the second stage, like a big tent. And there was a band on before us who we knew from LA, and they were massive in America, and there was like 6 people watching them, and we're like, we're fucked here. Yeah. Like, we're going. They don't know these guys. They're not going to know us. Yeah. We've only got an EP out, so you know we were a bit like, oh shit, this is going to be fucking hard work. We've come all the way to Japan to play to like 6 people. Anyway, we went back to the dressing room, and then when we came out on stage, there was so many people, and they were going so nuts. They actually had American military guys there as extra backup for security that they use on the front. On the main stage, just as extra people, extra muscle, and they ended up having to bring them into our front of, you know, our punter barrier to help bring all the people over the thing, because everyone was going so nuts. And we'd always heard that, you know, crowds in Japan were very mellow and polite, but that's not the case for us. And at that point, I was like, holy shit, this is global. Like, this is people in Japan who've heard an EP going absolutely mental, that they needed to bring in the Americans.
Yeah, the American soldiers who were just here.
The American soldiers, yeah.
Who were just here, just got a base around the corner.
Exactly, yeah.
And now we've got to ask the questions about the living. Like, was it hard living, or are you... I mean, I'm guessing it must have been to a degree, because of how you started. You said you went out in the piss with them, I'm guessing. You realised you got on well enough to send them a text the next day. So, obviously, you've got the pub rock thing going on. Mm-hmm. Then you're all similar age. You're all kind of got a disposable income, and you're in that industry where, you know, the grown-ups expect you to drink a carton of piss at work on a night, you know, in a green room. It's not many industries like that where you're expected to drink. You know, the employers, the venue owners, the tour managers put grog in there. You expect you to drink it, and then, you know, you end up doing that. How many nights a week? How was it?
Well, I mean, it's exactly that. Like, you imagine if anyone was a 22-year-old with, you know, unlimited cash and in a new city every night playing rock and roll, like, it's exactly what the cliche. You expect. You know, we did exactly what you'd expect us to do. Like anyone probably would. Yeah. And we did that for ages, and then it just catches. One day, it just catches up with you, and you're like, ouch! Like, and now when we play, it's all about the show. We'll have a drink before the show, and we'll have a drink after the show, but it's much more about the show as the important thing. And you know what? It's interesting about that. The shows are really heaps better.
Yeah, for sure. That's what.
But
that's the truth of the matter.
For example, at the ARIAs, it was like at the ARIAs this week. We played last at the Hall of Fame at the ARIA Awards, and because inductees always get inducted, and then they play, and we close the show. And it was like I said to one of my mates, who ex-footy player, ex-AFL player, I was like, he was like, how was it? Did you get drunk? And I was like, actually, it was like Brownlow night if you're playing in the grand final. Yeah. that at the end of the week.
Yeah,
like
right.
you're sitting there like holding a glass of champagne, but you're just not, or a soda water, and you're not drinking it. You know?
Yeah.
But in the past, it wouldn't have gone that way. I know.
That's a very good way of putting it. It's a Brownlow night if you're playing in the grand final.
Yeah.
Was that a surreal moment,
It's-
being inducted into the Hall of Fame there? Or was it just, it was another moment, obviously, that was nice, but was it like, wow, this is pretty
You
incredible?
know what? It was like I was a bit kind of a bit funny about it. Like I felt weird. It didn't sit. It's just weird to get honoured in music for me. Like I just feel like it's obviously we're grateful, but for me, it's not why you do it. You know, it's not. You know, and there was a bit of a stress about it. You know, got to play in front of the whole industry. But when we played and we just feeling the love from all the bands and all the music industry at once. And sometimes, you know, we often would feel like maybe a bit ostracized from the Australian music industry because we tended to go overseas and look for opportunities rather than just sticking here and doing the grind here. We'd be doing it in America or the Europe or USA, or UK or whatever. So to feel that, you just feel the love and the excitement, and everyone just knows the tunes because they're part of the DNA now within Australian music. Because our first few records are some of the biggest selling rock records of all time here.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about that. How did you maintain the DNA of, you know, Get Born into Shine On? You know, you got a couple of years in between each of them, right? You got 2003,
and a lot happened. A lot happened in between those two albums too. So Shine On's a bit of a darker vibe because in that period between the two albums, Nick and Chris's dad died of cancer while we were on the road.
Right.
So it was very dark. It was a bit more of a sort of darker feeling around that record, and it was a bit more of a grind to get it done. And also the sophomore album, as everybody knows, is fucking pain in the ass because all of a sudden it's your job.
Is it scary?
Yeah, it's terrifying.
What are the feelings? And when was the pressure valve? Because obviously you come through again 3 years after that.
I think the pressure is on you. You put it on yourself, but it's like you're feeling like, I feel like you'd handle it better now as a sort of someone who's seen the world and, you know, gone through a lot of things. But at the time you're 25, 26 and you're like, holy shit, we've got all these big companies are invested in us now and all these people who, you know, put their jobs on the line and stuff like that. And now we've got to make art for commerce sake rather than just making a record that we wanted to make that we just made in a shed, you know, or wrote in a shed.
Yeah, and there's no like, you come to us and see us in our pub. You know, you kind of don't have those bargaining chips anymore.
No.
What do you think was the one in the second album that kind of broke through, that, you know, gave you the pressure release?
I think the thing with that record, it came out in a time when after that record came out after all of the streaming stuff had started and the Napstar and people had started buying less records. So I think we were holding it up to perform exactly the same or better as the first record, but without sort of realizing that industry had changed a lot in that period, and we probably hadn't sort of kept up because we were so busy. So, you know, there was YouTube, there's all the things that we have now. It sort of started in between those two albums. But in saying that, it still like performed almost as well as the first one. But I think the songs on that would Bring It On Back was pretty big here, especially in Australia and the UK. We had Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is that did really well in America. But there's another song called Rip It Up, which was another one that we released here.
Yeah, Rip It Up went off. You do some funny things too, you guys. I mean, you're old rock stars, and you know, Shaka Rock included a cover of Never Tear Us Apart.
Did it?
Yeah.
Not on...
In your pre-order. Yeah.
Oh, it must have been like a special... Oh, fuck. You know more than me. It must have been like a live recording or something. I don't even know. You know what? It's probably one of those things where the label's like, oh, we need an extra couple of songs because Japan always wanted a couple extra songs on their releases, and then you need like, oh, we've got pre-order, you know, release where you can get an extra song. So we've probably just dug something out of the fucking bin and that we just had sitting there and added it because, you know, it's hard to, once you're on the road, getting back into the studio and recording another song is pretty hard to find time for. So you know, it'll probably be a live version or something.
I want to talk about that when you kind of, you're in a position where you've got all these people investing in you, you're making your music, you're on tour, the tickets have sold. And I've actually been in a green room before and got to see that like kind of almost moment of freedom that a band has when they have a piece of paper and all the band rallies around and they kind of, you know, figure out what they're going to play tonight. You know, they put, you know, it's depending on what kind of band you are, people do that on the night.
Yeah.
And when you're in that position to do whatever the fuck you want, have you ever done anything? I mean, Never Tear Us Apart is a good one to hit them with. Can you remember doing something like that was just a complete curveball for this audience, or maybe played something for them?
Yeah. I think we did. I remember in Boston once we were playing at this venue, theatre over the road from Fenway Park, and we learnt that sort of 60s garage song called Dirty Water.
Yeah,
and
right.
they all sing at the stadium. And it we learnt that and we played it and it went down it was like they were going to tear the house down. And then we played it first. So it was kind of a mistake because we were like, we'll probably butcher it. But it's it's this famous song by a band from Boston from the 60s. I can't remember the name of the band. It's like a real garagey band song. It's one of the songs that they play at Fenway Park all the time.
Yeah.
Which I think we knew the song, but I think we may have got insight into it from like a local promoter or something when we met, you know, and things like that. Doing things like that where you play a song for a town that was always pretty fun. Even if you fuck it up or butcher it, they didn't care.
Yeah, they'd appreciate it.
It's pretty hard to butcher a garage rock song. They're pretty, you know, janky and easy to play. But I remember that just like I think what had happened was at the time we came through Boston before, we played it as like our walk-on music. And they went nuts. So I think we thought, next time we'll play the song. Yeah.
Going to treat them to it. I wanted to ask you guys, obviously, global superstars in kind of a rare air for Australian musical acts. You would have been around and performed with or in front of all sorts of different people, you know, Jay-Z, Beyonce, etc., musicians everywhere. Did you have any random pinch yourself moments where someone you kind of never would have expected or someone you idolized, you know, turned up wanting to be backstage at a show or wanted to meet you in a certain place that you were in?
Yeah, I mean, look, we got asked to tour the Stones, they liked us, so they asked us to go out on the road with them a lot in Europe, and it was pretty crazy. So it'd be like you'd be doing your European summer festivals on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then the Stones would have us out on their tour on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know. So you'd be kind of like splitting your time between doing your own festivals, in one or two countries, and then you'd meet them in Portugal or something and do some shows with them, and then you go back out. And it got to a point where they were so comfy with us, we were having dinner with them every night, and then in the catering area, it wasn't like separated or anything. They'd be like, if you're on your own, they'd be like, Ronnie would be like, come sit over here with us.
Yeah, right.
Like, hey, Ronnie. And when we had a day off or a night off in town, they would get an invite because all their security guys at the time, and I don't know if it's still the case, but all their the guys that live in security with Mick and Keith, they were Aussies.
Yeah, right.
So I think they liked us because we were you know, Aussies and they knew us, and I think instantly it got. And if you're in with those guys, you're in. Yeah. They're kind of the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
So. The guy, there was a dude there who was ex-Special Forces Australian guy who would stand at the front of the show and basically wherever Mick went, he'd go with his eye on the audience, and he wore Kevlar gloves so he could stop knives and shit like that. It was pretty. They were big boys. I think they were big ex-rugby guys or something.
Yeah,
they had
right.
that sort of vibe. They were big boys. But they treated us really well. So we'd get invited to all the special events, you know, on a rooftop in Madrid, they've got the best flamenco guitarists and dancers in Spain.
Yeah.
And then they put on a party, they're having a party, the Stones are putting on and we'd always get invited to those funny things like that. So,
well, you have to actually behave. After everything, it's like we've created this world where we don't have to behave, but for whatever reason, in front of these people that probably taught us how to not behave, we have to behave.
Yeah, or you get a Kevlar glove on your shoulder and walked out.
Exactly.
That's a funny one. I was also wondering, I've been seeing a bit recently on particularly TikTok, you start seeing clips surfacing every now and then of kind of famous riffs or beats or whatever, and the behind the scenes of that moment where it's found, you know, and you can see a Timberland going like, holy shit, this is it. For you guys, do you remember the moment where you found that riff for Are You Gonna Be My Girl?
I can't even remember that long ago. I remember when we made it in the studio thinking, I wonder if this song's a single or not. Who knows? You know, like,
Yeah,
because sometimes when it's your song, you just sort of, you treat them all kind of the same. You might go like, that song's really good, but it's almost other people who have a better sense of that kind of thing than you. I find. Like, you can think what you think is the right one, but like often someone with a little bit different perspective will be able to shine a better light on it than you. But yeah, I guess everyone probably thought that was going to be the first big one, but I guess when I was recording it in the studio, I just, it's a bit of that sort of stuff's a bit of a blur, to be honest, because you don't really remember how it started. It's so long ago.
Yeah.
Tell me about what really would have been, I guess, as an apex for you guys was Wave Aid, right? Was this like you guys were at your height? Did Jet play there, or was it just that one-off Rights tribute band?
That was just the Rights. So we did, the one we did was the one they did for the bushfires. I had it at the MCG and they had it at the SCG, and we did both. We did the MCG one, and then we got on a plane and flew up to Sydney and did the SCG. And the other thing we did was, remember they did Live Aid?
Yeah, Live Aid.
Yeah, we did that, which was pretty great. And that was, we did the Canadian one of that. And we actually got up, Neil Young asked us to jump up and sing with him on a song, which was pretty wild. Yeah.
That's a pinch yourself.
Yeah. And I was wearing fucking white pants when I got up there with Neil Young, which just felt totally inappropriate with Neil Young. It's just like... I just remember going like, oh, fuck, I wore my fucking white pants, and that's like, Neil Young is not a white pants artist.
No, not at all. He's an old man.
Denim and flannel. Yes.
So you guys did on paper disband, as you said the other night. Brownlow's, it was your Brownlow's, your grand final Brownlow's.
Playing the grand final, yeah.
But do you guys tour and stuff, and what's the current working relationship?
We do, yeah. We've sort of just decided to start, like, we actually decided earlier in the year that we were going to start working together again and figuring out how that will look and how we'll do it and how we'll work it with families and whatnot. And we just did a tour of Australia just before the ARIAs, but we did one of those ones where we just played, like, if any's like Enmore and Forum and stuff like that we could sell out like in 20 minutes without even really advertising. So it was like one of those ones where even my friends didn't know I did a tour, because when you sell them out that fast, you don't need to waste any money on advertising them, you know. Yeah. But, you know, that was just to get a sense of what we could still do here and how long it would take to sell tickets, just to get a sense of what we can sort of aim for in the future. But now we've got stuff. We'll be announcing we just announced the show in Darwin for Bass in the Grass Festival, which will be unreal. It's a great festival if you can avoid the giant fucking bugs that fly into your face in slow motion in the lights and just go right in your face really slow, but you can't squat them away because you're busy playing.
I love that visceral memory you have.
Oh mate, yeah. And I might have to go up to that one earlier because I just saw my football club's going to be playing up there 2 days before, so I might have to go up earlier and watch them play at TIO. And we've got another bunch of shows we're going to announce probably soon. I don't know the exact date, but we can't say anything. I can't say it yet because I think it's still embargoed.
Yeah, right.
But it's just a big sort of tour again.
So you kind of, I guess, 20 years since Get Born, and you're now doing ARIA Hall of Fame, and you're getting the ball rolling again. And it's also 10 years since you know, was it 2012 that you guys kind of disbanded?
So we disbanded then. We kind of got back together in 2015 or earlier. We got asked by Springsteen to go on tour with him. So we were like, it was Gadinsky and Springsteen. Two people you probably don't... two people you can't really say no to, you know. So we did that, and then we enjoyed that. So we sort of... We did a tour of Japan not long after, and then we did Fuji Rock again, and we did another a bigger Australian tour about 5 years ago. But we kind of just done little bits and pieces and a European thing, but it was more like, we'll just do stuff when it pops up and it sounds like fun, rather like a lifestyle band rather than like a touring thing. But I think over the past year we've decided, well, maybe would be a good idea to start playing again. We're enjoying it, write new stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's been ages since we've written new stuff.
And
So
I want to ask, what do you do with this when it ends? Like the music stops. 2012, you kind of, as you said, 2015, you get back together. You're a bit more of a lifestyle band. But what are you guys all doing outside of that?
Well, I do all kinds of shit. I have another band with a bunch of other Australian musicians, with Cram from Spiderbait, Darren from Powderfinger, and Davey from UMI, and we called ARC. And we do basically every year we're doing Led Zeppelin 4 this year, for example, which is like we go out and we meticulously recreate an album that we love, and we do a big tour, tend to play all over the country with capital cities and regional. Mostly, we tend to play a lot of shows in Queensland. It seems to go down well up. We're doing Toowoomba and Maryborough and Tweed Heads, which is technically on the edge, right?
Yeah.
And Caloundra and Brisbane. So we spend most of the time in Queensland. And
they got those big sprawling pub venues, don't they?
We do. But this show we do in sort of big theatres. So
right.
Like QPAC or something like that in Brisbane. So it's a big show. It's a big grand kind of fucking opulent show that we have crazy lights and we did Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd last year, and then we did Neil Young's Harvest the year before that. So we just pick an album we love that's kind of a classic, and then we just try and emulate it almost like a recital.
Yeah, right.
So that keeps me busy, and then I do a bit of tour managing and stuff as well in between, mostly comics. I just finished with Tim Minchin yesterday.
Yeah, right.
I did.
Right.
And, I look after Rob Brydon when he comes out here. And
so you know all the tricks now.
Yeah. Well, it's basically you just get paid to hang out with a funny person.
Yeah. What medium-priced hotels in Australia have the best mattresses?
Ridges, Bowen Hills.
Yes, everyone says it. Everyone says Ridges, Bowen Hills near the
really?
Ekka Showground.
It's true though. It's like $250 a night or $180 a night, but the beds are fucking great.
Yeah.
The beds are so good. Get this, Linda Bull. She's from Vicar and Linda, sings with Paul Kelly and artists in their own right. Linda was on tour with us doing some singing vocals for us, and she loved the bed there so much she bought one. She contacted the hotel. And she bought a bed there. She paid for it and then they shipped it to her house. I'm not joking. It's true.
Man, we learned about it from when we did we did a tour, a stage tour. And we learned every 3 or 4 people we met along the way were like, your first tour, you stay in the Ridges and Bowen Hills, you stay in the Ridges, and we're like, yeah, we are actually. And we learned that from the roadie Yogi. Yeah,
there's something in the Springs.
It's true. It's like I can't believe you've heard that before, because for me it's not even it's like just a pretty basic hotel, and it's in an okay spot. But it's just good. I just like it. It's just something about it.
When you tour,
it's not fancy, or it's not like where I go for a fancy weekend for sure. But
when you tour that much, I guess as well, and you pass those days, it's like we are talking beds now. We're not talking about.
We're talking beds.
We're not talking proximity to the valley anymore. We're talking how am I going to sleep?
We're talking feather count and.
Well, mate. Here's to getting back on the road with the boys.
Thank you.
And,
thanks for talking to me.
Congratulations on all your accolades, your honours, as we said before. But it's time for you to perform in front of fans, not industry suits.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to say one of the things, a Betoota thing that I send to people endlessly and have done for years. It's my favourite thing you've ever put up. It's like there's no love greater than a man and a dog, a dad and a dog he said he didn't want. and every time a friend gets a shit little dog, I send them that thing, and every time they buy that dog, they're in love. 2 years later, they're just like pictures of them cuddling it and stuff. It's like
it's such a beautiful process. It starts off with it being a stupid mongrel rat thing, and they're not interested, and then all of a sudden the weeks go by and they're just out in the backyard with it, having a bit of fun.
Once they've reluctantly fenced the entire backyard.
Yeah.
And then they're like,
a friend of mine just bought a Papillon for his daughters, and I was like, he got the screenshot that I have saved in my phone.
Well, there's another layer to that too. They say that a lot as well about the dad it's a much more compromised position, but the dad with the unplanned pregnancy in the household, like the daughter, so it's like the unwanted grandfather, they then become that too. So.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Well, thanks, mate, and all the best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
20 years since Get Born, and Jet are back on the road. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.